Under the relentless white glow of the showroom lights, the air felt unnervingly still, as though the glass walls themselves were holding their breath. The salesman's voice cut through it, sharp, brittle, almost trembling with the strange courage of someone convinced they were in control. Shoal. His words were not loud, but the meaning in them carried across the marble floor and made the few customers scattered about stiffen in their seats. He had already called the police. His eyes said so before his lips confirmed it. And in that moment, all the weight of what he thought he saw pressed itself against the man standing silently before him. The man did not flinch. He did not argue, did not plead. His stillness was unnerving, like the pause between a storm's distant rumble and the first drop of rain. Camille. His hands rested loosely at his sides, steady, unthreatening, but unmoving in a way that made it impossible to mistake his resolve. His gaze stayed level with the salesman's, though there was nothing confrontational in it. If anything, there was a quiet sorrow, as though he had seen this scene play out too many times before, in too many places, wearing too many different masks. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an unremarkable dark hoodie and worn jeans. But nothing about him was unremarkable. A faint scar traced a line from just beneath his ear down toward his collarbone, visible only when the light caught it, and when he shifted slightly, the fabric of his shirt stretched against the carved muscle of someone whose strength had been earned under far heavier burdens than gym weight. His eyes, steady, deep, carried the quiet, patient gravity of a man who had seen life stripped to its bones. His name was Jordan Cole, and 3 hours before, he had left a small rented house on the east side of town with a folded cashier's check tucked neatly into his wallet, the ink still fresh from the bank teller's printer. He had driven here not for vanity, not for flash, but because the car waiting in the corner of this gleaming showroom was one he had promised himself years ago. A promise made in dust and sand under a sky streaked with fire, when tomorrow was never certain, and the idea of a someday was the only thread that kept him moving. He had served 12 years in the Marines, 3 deployments in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. He had come home with fewer friends than he'd left with, carrying ghosts that followed him through every quiet hour of the night. The smell of diesel and burnt sand still clung to his memory. The metallic taste of the air before an explosion still sat on his tongue when the wrong scent caught him off guard. He bore no medals around his neck here in the dealership, no uniform to speak for him, only the silent dignity of someone who had given more than most could imagine, and asked for nothing in return. But dignity was invisible to the salesman. What he saw was a black man in a hoodie walking into a showroom lined with imported cars worth more than most people's homes. He saw confidence where he expected meekness, calm where he expected nervousness. He saw the folded check Jordan placed on the desk as something that could not possibly belong to him, and in that stubborn certainty, he had picked up the phone. Other customers noticed. A couple by the espresso bar exchanged glances, but said nothing. A young man scrolling through his phone in the corner looked up briefly, curiosity flickering before returning to his screen. The silence of their inaction wrapped itself around the room, thick and suffocating. Jordan didn't move. The salesman tried to fill the air with nervous chatter, assuring himself more than anyone else that the call was necessary, that the police would sort it out. Minutes stretched. Jordan's stillness became a quiet wall against which the salesman's unease broke again and again. Jordan's thoughts drifted, not to anger, but to the heat of another desert, to the sound of boots crunching over loose gravel, to the face of his friend Marcus laughing under a tattered tarp just hours before their convoy was hit. Marcus had talked then about buying a Mustang when they got home. He never did. Jordan had decided that if he made it back, he'd buy the car for himself, not because he needed it, but because it would mean that someday had come. When the police arrived, the air in the showroom tightened. 2 officers stepped in, scanning the room until the salesman pointed with a discreet but unmistakable gesture. Jordan met their approach with the same silence he had given the salesman. He reached into his back pocket slowly, deliberately, producing his ID and the folded check. The officers glanced at them, then at the salesman, their expressions shifting subtly as they read the amount, the bank seal, and the name that matched the one on the ID. One officer asked a single question. Jordan answered with the brevity of a man who had no interest in proving himself to anyone. The officers exchanged a look that carried a flicker of something, respect, perhaps, or the reluctant understanding that they had been called into someone else's prejudice. They turned to the salesman, who now seemed smaller under the weight of their silence. One of them spoke low, measured words that carried just enough for those nearby to hear, and the salesman's face paled. Jordan did not gloat. He did not smirk or speak to fill the void. Instead, he walked to the corner of the showroom, ran his hand along the smooth, cool surface of the car he had come for, and placed the check on the manager's desk. The room had shifted now. The bystander's silence was different. It was heavier, tinged with the shame of those who had watched and done nothing. And yet, Jordan carried no visible bitterness, only that same unshakable stillness. As the paperwork was signed, the salesman stood off to the side, eyes fixed on the floor. No apology came. Jordan did not ask for one. When he finally stepped outside into the sunlight, keys in hand, the officers lingered by their patrol car, giving him a nod that carried more weight than any apology could. He returned it, slid into the driver's seat, and for a brief moment, closed his eyes. He thought of Marcus, of dusty roads and uncertain tomorrows, and of the promise kept. Some victories are not loud. They are not marked by applause or headlines. They are marked by the quiet reclaiming of dignity, by the refusal to bend under the weight of another's assumptions. Food. Jordan drove away without looking back. The car's engine was smooth, the leather warm under his hands, the road ahead open. Later, the story would ripple beyond the walls of that dealership. Not because Jordan told it, but because others who had been there could not forget the sight of a man who needed no raised voice to command respect. A man who showed that silence, when held with honor, can be louder than any accusation. And for those who heard it, the lesson lingered. Respect is not something granted by permission, but something owed by virtue of shared humanity. The unseen battles people fight may not be obvious, but they are real, and sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the heaviest history. That day, the salesman learned it too, though perhaps far too late.